Some messages should never be sent. Some calls should never connect. But sometimes death isn't strong enough to disconnect the line. Tonight, we follow David, a widower, and texts arriving from a number that no longer exists. Welcome to Midnight Chills, bedtime horror stories. David had buried his wife Emma 10 days earlier. Cancer had taken her in 6 brutal months. He kept her phone in his nightstand drawer, unable to delete their shared digital life. The first text arrived at 3:33 a.m. I miss you. Emma's name glowed on the screen. David's hands trembled as he stared at the impossible message. Someone was playing a sick joke. He deleted it and tried to sleep. The next night, another message. Why aren't you answering me? Then, David, it's me. I know you can see these. He called the phone company. Emma's number had been permanently disconnected the day she died. Impossible for it to send messages, but they kept coming every night at 3:33 a.m., the exact time she had died. I'm so cold here. The darkness is complete. I can't feel my body, but my mind won't stop. David stopped sleeping. The messages included private details only Emma could have known. Conversations from her final days in the hospital. Words she had whispered when no one else was around. Do you remember what I told you before I died? That I wasn't afraid of death, just of leaving you alone? I was wrong, David. This place is terrifying. Then came the first photograph. Dark, grainy, the interior of a casket from an impossible angle. Emma's wedding ring gleaming on decomposing bone. David vomited and collapsed on his kitchen floor, the phone still clutched in his shaking hands. He drove to the cemetery. Emma's grave was undisturbed, but his phone buzzed as he stood there. You came to visit me. I can see you standing there. David spun around. The cemetery was empty except for distant figures too far away to see him clearly. You look so tired, my love. That night, at 3:33 a.m., his phone rang. Emma's photo smiled from the screen. David answered on the 4th ring. Silence stretched for 30 seconds, then breathing. Wet, labored, like drowning in reverse. Static crackled through the speaker. Underneath, he heard scratching sounds, fingernails on wood. Then a voice emerged from the interference. Broken, distorted. David, cold, so cold. The voice cleared, becoming unmistakably Emma's, but wrong. Hollow, echoing as if spoken from the bottom of a well. She told him about the place where she was trapped. Neither heaven nor hell, but somewhere between. A gray space where the dead who couldn't let go remained conscious. She described feeling her body decay while her mind stayed sharp. The sensation of insects crawling through her rotting flesh. The sound of her own bones settling as tissue dissolved. But worse than the physical horror was the knowledge of how she had died. Alone, calling his name, reaching for her phone while he sat in budget meetings, his phone on silent. She had called him 17 times that day. He never answered. The calls became nightly rituals of guilt and horror. Emma described others trapped in that gray space with her. Angry spirits who envied her connection to the living world. They want what I have, David. They want someone who still loves them. Someone who feels guilty enough to join them. David tried everything to escape. New phone, new number, different carrier. The messages followed him. He threw his phone away. A package arrived the next morning with a replacement. Emma's messages already waiting. The photographs became more disturbing. Her grave from impossible underground angles. Her casket from beneath 6 feet of earth. Images of her decomposing body that no camera should have captured. The messages grew urgent. They're coming for me tonight. The others trapped here. They know you can hear me. David, I don't know how much longer I can resist them. They want me to bring you here. If you don't come to me, they'll make me hurt everyone you care about. David researched the cemetery. Built on the site of an old psychiatric hospital that had burned down in 1952, killing dozens of patients locked in their rooms. For decades, visitors had reported calls from the dead, graves disturbed from the inside, messages from buried relatives. At midnight, David drove to the cemetery with a shovel. The air was unnaturally still. No wind, no insects, no sound except his own ragged breathing. Emma's grave looked wrong in the moonlight. The grass was brown and wilted. The soil seemed loose, eager to be moved. His phone buzzed. I can feel you above me. Start digging. David drove the shovel into the earth. The dirt was soft, almost liquid. As he dug, the temperature dropped. His breath became visible in the suddenly frigid air. The smell of decay rose from the hole, sweet and cloying. 6 feet down, metal scraped against his shovel. The casket was there, but the lid was slightly open. Impossible. He had watched them seal it. Inside, the casket was completely empty. Not just of Emma's body, but of everything. No dress, no flowers, no pillow. Just bare satin and the faint outline where a body should have been. His phone lit up with one final message. "Thank you for setting me free." David turned to find Emma standing at the edge of the grave. She looked exactly as she had on their wedding day, but her skin was pale as moonlight. Her eyes reflected no light at all. She smiled with perfect teeth and extended her hand. "Come home with me, David." Her voice carried the sound of wind through empty places. Behind her, dozens of figures emerged from the shadows between the headstones. Patients from the old hospital. Other visitors to the cemetery who had dug too deep, answered too many calls. David took her cold hand without hesitation. The guilt was finally too much to bear. They found his car in the cemetery parking lot 3 days later. David's body was discovered sitting peacefully beside Emma's empty grave. No signs of struggle, no cause of death. His phone was clutched in his hands. The screen showed one final message, time-stamped 3:33 a.m. "We're together now, forever." That night, both David's phone and Emma's disconnected number began calling random numbers throughout the city. People reported receiving messages from unknown contacts, speaking of love that transcends death and loneliness that demands company. A cemetery groundskeeper now finds fresh graves dug up from the inside every few months, always empty. Always with a phone left behind, still receiving messages from numbers that don't exist. Some love refuses to die. Others refuse to let the living escape their guilt. If you ever receive a call from someone who shouldn't be able to dial your number, don't answer. Or do, and discover what the dead truly want from those they've left behind. This was Midnight Chills, Bedtime Horror Stories.